welcome to Magical Coffee Hour. This week we are going to continue our series on the Laws of Magic. In the last Magical Coffee Hour, we left off on Law 12. Of course, we took Mother's Day off, so everyone had time to spend with their families. Okay, so hopefully y'all made good use of that time. Um, let's see. Now, I also want to remind everybody that Magical Coffee Hour has actually moved to the community live until we can get the YouTube issue fixed, because that's still an ongoing thing. So if you want to catch us live, join us over at the Working Dragon Mystic community. You can find it at workingdragonmystic.com, or you can find the link to the community in the description box below on YouTube when you're watching this as a replay. So with that, let's go ahead and get into this, okay? Viewers, if you're watching and you have any questions, feel free. We will try to take off-topic questions at the end if we have time. Last time we really didn't have a lot of time, so we will see what we got. All right. The 13th law is the law of personification. Any phenomenon may be considered to be alive and to have a personality, that is, to be an entity or being, and may be effectively dealt with thusly. Anything can be a person. This is one of those things you do see a lot in a lot of shamanic practices and animism and stuff like that, where whether it's the wind, whether it's a storm, whether it's a tornado, an earthquake, they often try to personify it as an entity and work with it in that way. It's giving it that shape, that commonality to allow you to work with it. This is one of the reasons why there's a lot of magicians out there who question, are any entities real, or are they all just constructs of mankind in one way or another? And that, to be fair, there's no real way to answer that 100% conclusively on either side of the fence. And that can lead down into a little philosophical spiral if you're not too cautious. But at the same time, the main thing here is, if you are having a problem, if you are working with something and you're unsure on how to work with it, there's no reason you can't actually apply personification to it and try to engage and work with it in that manner. Okay. Let's see, Matthias, that's very interesting given some of my past experiences. I agree. Actually, I'm one of those that I come into it and I originally assumed entities weren't real. They were completely 100% constructs, but you could work through them. Like I mentioned, I think in the Goetic series, a lot of people think you're evoking a part of yourself, and I thought that to be true. Um, I'll admit I'm kind of on the other side of the fence now that I've had enough experience with so many entities that I don't think I'm just evoking a part of myself. There's definitely an external factor, but that doesn't mean that that external factor isn't something that was personified by another being, another, the human race in general, or anything like that. I can't fully answer that. And I always find myself bobbing and weaving back and forth, to be honest. Are these things real, or are we just personifying them? I find myself bobbing back and forth quite often in my practice and my meditations. Um, I always, I don't know, I find it healthy to question things at times. I really do. All right. The 14th law is the law of invocation. It is possible to establish internal communication with entities either inside or outside oneself, said entities seeming to be inside of oneself during communication process, being within. So this is essentially saying you can communicate, have an inner dialogue or inner communication with entities. And this is again where we do see that original definition of invocation, where you're having an internal conversation with an entity. And this is, one of those things. A lot of people view invocation as respectful and evocation as forceful and binding. That's not the original terms. I want to clarify that. So invocation is literally the communication is taking place internally. So if you're invoking an entity, you're actually pulling that entity and that ether into you, which is it can have side effects. It can definitely leave fingerprints, and those side effects, depending on how deep the invocation is and how strong it is, that side effect and that fingerprint can last for an extended period of time. That's why some magicians advise against it. I'm not a big fan of it unless I truly trust an entity. And then there's some magicians, they'll dive right in because they're actually looking for that fingerprint. They're looking for that alteration, that transmutation. Risks be damned, right? That's just kind of what they're in it for. Aylin, welcome. Ethan, welcome. We just got started. Let's see. Course 15 is the law of evocation. And it basically reads the same thing. We're just going to swap some words around. It is possible to establish external communication with entities from either inside or outside oneself, said entities seeming to be outside oneself during communication, being without. See, now we're talking about that communication externally and the entity being external of ourselves, right? And again, you're seeing that original meaning of evocation, contacting an entity externally, right? So there it is. Now, one thing I have heard that from a lot of mages also is that it's actually very interesting that these two follow the law of personification. And I agree with that because if anything in the multiverse can actually be personified as an individual or an entity, also being the reason we cannot guarantee any entities are not constructs of mankind, it also makes sense that we can personify them and communicate internal and external, and that communication does bear that factor. Um, so it starts to get into those deeper depths of meditative and philosophical debates there. The law 16, and again, if you guys got any questions, type them in the chat box here and let me see them. I'll try to do my best to answer them. 16 is law of identification. It is possible through maximum association between the elements of oneself and those of another being to actually become that being, to the point sharing its knowledge and wielding its power, you can become another. This one is a fascinating one. And when we're dealing with invocation specifically, or even possession rituals and stuff like that, or an area where you're actually trying to become a conduit for another being or some kind, there's a lot of religious practices where people will do that. The more you can closely associate yourself with that entity as part of the ritual, the more you're easily going to be able to harness that knowledge and power, is the concept of this. So that's one of those things that you do see it a lot. You see it in a lot of different practices, especially shamanic practices. I've seen it in Norse practices. I've seen it in some Wiccan practices. And I've seen it in some voodoo practices. They heavily, heavily, heavily dive into that association and try to align with it long before the ritual ever starts, because they're setting up that etheric alignment there. Let's see. Law 17, law of infinite data. The number of phenomenon to be known is infinite. We will never run out of things to learn. There's always something new. This one, I love this one personally, but also it's kind of one of those that, I don't know, maybe it's my generation, but I want to say duh. Like the multiverse, as far as we know, is infinite, right? So every time we learn something new, there's going to be like 1,000 new things that suddenly pops into existence. It's almost like computers, right? We create anything technological to solve one problem, and it creates 100 new problems that now even the computers need therapists. Um, it's a constantly expanding thing, and everything we learn is increasing the data in the multiverse, and therefore it's expanding out infinitely. But I do understand why this is here, because it's also a reminder to the practitioner that you're always in a constant pursuit, right? You're always going to be moving. There's not an end to that road, really. But a lot of people, they do just kind of say duh and they wonder why it was there. But I think it's also important. But I also like the concept that there's always things to learn, right? I would get very bored very quick if there wasn't. This one is important. This is one a lot of people miss. Law 18, law of finite senses. Finite senses. Um, every sense mechanism of every entity is limited by both range and type of data perceived. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. All right. Now, this is a really important one for a lot of reasons. First off, it reminds us that the world around us, much less the multiverse, is far larger, far more complex than we know and than we understand, right? Because this is stuff that was being penned and wrote down when we didn't know what atoms were. We didn't know necessarily what cells were, you know? And of course, science is being able to dive in and we're looking at things on the atomic level of things our eyes can't see, right? Um, so we are limited by the limitations of our senses. This is true in real life, and this is true in magic and projection. Like you can sit there and astral project yourself or soul travel through the multiverse. Your senses are still limited by the fact that your very existence can't understand things beyond you. Like your senses are limited, even through astral travel and soul travel, they are limited. Okay. So there are certain things they would not be able to perceive because you don't have an understanding of it. And your senses can't go beyond that specific understanding. So do remember that there's plenty of things out there that our understanding alone stops us from seeing. Um, then we get to law 19, which is law of personal universe. Okay. This one's going to be fun. So be ready to ask questions if you got them. Everyone lives in and quite possibly creates a unique universe that is never 100% identical to that lived in by another so-called reality. It is in fact a matter of conscious opinions. You live in your cosmos and I'll live in mine. Okay. So this is literally under the concept that, I mean, we've seen this in a few places in science where infinite universes and infinite multiverses and infinite dimensions is hypothesized or theorized. And it's kind of cool on that. But this is stating that your experience is going to be unique to you, right? Yes, there's overlap, right? Think of every person's own personal universe as you draw a circle, and your circle will overlap every person you meet and interact with. And even a few that you are unaware that you're interacting with and affecting, but it won't affect everybody. But then all the people's, it's just like a big cluster of circles. I almost said something I can't say on YouTube. It's a military reference. Those who know, you know. Clusters in it though. So it's just a big cluster of circles that constantly are overlapping, but each one is unique in its own way. And your choices, your movements is what makes yours truly unique, right? And this is also one of those concepts where, because it is your personal universe, that also means you have control of it. You can manipulate it. As a magician, you can control it. That is a very, very empowering bit of knowledge, right? And that's something I've seen a lot of magicians, like they are having a really, really bad day. And this is kind of the thing where they pull themselves up. They remind themselves of Law 19. And if Law 19 holds true, then they can sit and wallow in their sorrow, or they can get up and fix it. Because just like you can turn a light on in your room, you can make the day better in your universe. All right. I think we all need to remember this one. I'm not going to lie. Friday, I had a day. Like I'd be honest, I don't even know what set me off. My wife probably does because I was just in a raw mood and I was trying to pull myself up and get in a better mood, and I eventually did. And then Saturday happened, and I felt really, really dumb because I got family who was affected by tornadoes, and let's just say they had a much worse day than I did, and I felt like a microscopically stupid and pathetic because I was bitching over something that I can't even remember. And it's just not even one of those things, right? So yeah, it's one of those things you have to remind yourself of this one. But it does bleed into the next one, which we've already touched on because it bleeds in so strongly. 20, law of infinite universes, the total number of universes into which all possible combinations of existing phenomenon could be organized is infinite. All things are possible, though some are more probable than others, is kind of a key that a lot of people put here. This is that concept of the infinite multiverse. If you can think of it somewhere out there, God knows where, we may never see it, but in theory, not in reality, but in theory, it exists somewhere out there, right? No matter how goofy it may be, there's probably a universe out there where Gumby is actually ruling the world. Who knows? Um, you know, it's one of those weird things. But it also shows us how large the possibilities are, right? And this is also both one of those empowering and humbling things. Because when you realize how large it is, it also reminds you how much data there is to manipulate. And if you remember early up in these laws, if you control every aspect and every single thing, then you control the entirety of the situation. Well, we're seeing that data expand, and we're starting to see why absolute perfected control is also not as easy as some people wished it was. Yes, Matthias, most of my family is good. My aunt is actually in the hospital, so if y'all want to send some wishes to her, we well wishes or prayers, I'd appreciate it. She is doing much, much better though she is still unconscious, last I heard. So, but yeah. I've been spending my weekend practicing what I preach and lifting up my family and keeping them their spirits up and my own, and putting my magic where my mouth is and doing what I can for my family from where I'm at. um, they even went out and found her dog, and the dog's already being taken care of and pampered and spoiled rotten. You know, that's the kind of family we are. We don't even let the critters. Um, we don't abandon critters. We take care of critters even in natural disasters. Um, I appreciate it, Matthias. I do. I really do. Um, it's one of those things, we humans, we get in this comfort zone of what we think our mastery of the world is. And we very quickly forget that what we build as structures for safety, they're not even a little house of matchsticks to Mother Nature. It's just one of those realities. And it's a humbling one. It is. Now, where was it? Oh yeah, we just finished the infinite universes. um, 21. Law of pragmatism. If a pattern or belief or behavior enables you to survive and to accomplish certain goals, then that belief or behavior is true or real or sensible on whatever levels of reality are involved. If it works, it's true. Okay. Now, not gonna lie, the science side of me hates this law. However, the practical and mystical side of me loves this law. Okay. And let me explain. No matter how much I want to believe that this right here is a solid gold coin, I can use it in rituals to represent a solid gold coin. I can, by all means, and it may work in a prosperity spell. And as far as that goes, it is working. It is true. This is my solid gold coin for my rituals. Take this to the bank. Is it suddenly a solid gold coin? Hell no. The bank is going to try and throw me out as a madman, right? There's a difference here in reality, truth, that kind of thing. And that's why some of the wording on these kind of pisses me off a little. And, or what you could call facts, like 2 + 2 is 4, things that we know, things that are true every single time it's applied. And then there's, that individual viewpoint, from that certain point of view, to quote an old man. And when we talk about magic, when we talk about mysticism, and we're talking about associations and things we're bringing into our individual practice, that's really where this comes into effect. And in a lot of ways, I've quoted this quite often, not directly on the channel, but remember, I say quite often, if what you're doing in your practice is working and is yielding the results you want and not hurting anyone, keep on doing it. That's basically this. If it's not working, reassess, reapply, figure out, find out what does work for you, right? That's what this is talking about. It's very straightforward and simple, if that makes sense. If anyone has any questions on this, by all means, ask and I'll try and clarify it. But that is what this is. Like I said, the science side of me, it grates. It grates on me because there's, certain truths and then there's perspectives. And this kind of blurs that line a little too much for my taste. But at the same time, I absolutely understand the power and the reason why this one's in there. Right? And we kind of bleed into the next one with this, which is 22, the law of true falsehoods. Now, if anyone else's brain just did a glitch, I get it. I get you. A concept or act may seem nonsensical and yet still be true, provided it works in a specific context, right? Notice they do at least go out and say in a specific context. So pretending this is a freaking gold coin for prosperity work and utilizing it to build prosperity in my life, yeah, that's crazy. Like I said, if I go to the bank, they might try to arrest me, or the bare minimum, they're going to laugh at me and maybe throw me out. But in the context of prosperity work, now it makes sense. Now it's working, right? So that would be a truth in the situation, even though it's false. Like, it is false that this is a gold coin, but it's true that it will hold in that context of a prosperity spell. That you're right. True falsehoods. Every time I read this, my brain wants to go, what? I'm getting better at it. I'm getting better at it. But hopefully that one makes sense there. All right. 23, law of polarity. Any pattern of data can be split into at least 2 patterns with opposing characteristics, and each will contain the essence of the other within itself. There's 2 sides to everything, the yin and the yang. The concept of there isn't anything that is truly, purely, singularly one thing. You know what I'm saying? All things have an opposite to it in some shape, form, or fashion. They're contained within it. And as you split it, you can't ever truly get away from the original. There's still going to be essences of that original in it. Okay? So everything will always contain its opposite in some shape, form, or fashion. And that can come in very handy in magic because if you think about it, you can use things that are the opposite of your spell work to still represent where you're going with it, right? I know people who use nightshades to dress healing candles because they're trying to heal a toxin, and they know that nightshades, though technically on their standard they're poisonous, they can also be used to dose for healing purposes. So they do contain that, and utilizing it in the spell for its healing properties, as well as a representation of burning away the toxin in the person they're trying to heal. They're literally using both sides of that etheric pattern in one whammy. And that's smart thinking. You see what I'm saying? So if you actually sit down, meditate, and ponder what something truly means to you and to, well, let's say herbal science or whatever, you can start seeing patterns in there that you can leverage magically during your spell work to literally multiply and amplify your workings on an intellectual level that allows you to further manipulate the ether to get stronger manifestations. 24, law of synthesis or synthesis. There we go. Synthesis. Sorry. The synthesis of two or more opposing patterns of data will produce a new pattern that will be truer than either of the first ones were. That is, it will be applicable to more realities. Okay. So again, we're playing around with that word truth, but we are seeing that you are taking two things that may have similarities, they may not have similarities, and you're forcing these things together. And what you're coming up with is essentially something that has more applications to it than just the original singular pattern, right? And if we look at that last law of polarity, how things can be divided, we're now looking at it from taking these divisions and we're looking at putting them back together, weaving them together into a much larger picture, right? Because let's be honest, a strand of yarn is boring. Even cats get bored with them if it's just a strand of yarn. But a tapestry that's been woven into something beautiful, well, it serves a much larger purpose and oftentimes tells a story. So we are seeing that when you put things together, you can do that. And same thing works with ether. Okay. All right. Law 25. This one, as a Dragon Magic practitioner, I love this one. Law of dynamic balance. If you study Dragon Magic, understand this law, please. To survive and become powerful, one must keep every aspect of one's universe in a state of balance with every other one. Extremism is dangerous on all levels of reality. Dance to the music. Okay, dynamic balance. First off, technically speaking, that perfect constant balance is probably impossible. Okay, let's be honest with ourselves. It's probably impossible. But dynamic means everything is constantly in motion, it's constantly changing, it's constantly moving. It's not like you get up in the morning, you meditate, you reach nirvana, you're at that perfect balance, and that means, okay, you're done for the rest of your life. No, you're not even done for the day, because by the time you leave your house, something's out of whack. Okay. Seriously, and if you're like, well, I just won't leave my house. Okay, by the time you do anything else that day, it's out of whack. It's in constant motion. Understanding that everything is in constant motion and constant flux means that you need to be aware of what your goals are, what you're wanting in your life, and what you do need to be working on and how to keep it balanced. Sometimes maintaining that balance is actually getting rid of stuff, right? I have known plenty of people who they have so many extracurricular hobbies that they can't get important stuff done, right? I've seen people who try to play D&D 4, 5, 6 times a week, and they're putting in 4 6-hour games, and they can't figure out why they can't get sleep and why they're always falling asleep at work and all these other things, and then why they ain't got time to run their errands, do their shopping. And it's like, well, you're really you're taking massive chunks of your week and playing D&D. You can see it with video games, you can see it with sports, you can see it with anything. People, like, we can really choose to waste our time. And that's not to say it's a bad thing. Y'all know I play D&D. I like D&D. But I also keep, and believe me, the thought process of could I squeeze in more DNA? It's popped in there. But in all truth, I evaluated, I look at my schedule, I look at what I want to do. And the answer is no. If I want to maintain a healthy work life balance and not go crazy, I can't do that. Okay. That's just one of those things. So you have to actually be honest with yourself and how you're doing that when you're maintaining that balance. That balance also comes into our metaphysical practice. If all you're doing is sitting doing rituals and spell all day and you're hoping that the world is suddenly just going to flip on its head and hand you everything, and you're not out there living in the real world, you got a 90% chance or higher that that spell work is going to go nowhere because you've over tilted. You're just all on one side. Hope that makes some sense. Yeah, a lot of people are familiar with concepts related to these. They just never sit down, and I don't know why this list isn't in more places. I really don't. Um, all right, the next one is law of perversity, and no, this isn't something kinky. Um, some people actually jokingly refer to this as Murphy's Law. Okay. And if you state it that way, this one actually becomes easier to remember. If anything can go wrong, it will. Plain and simple. And in the most annoying way possible. Like they even actually put the joke in here. So, that's kind of fun. Let's have a sense of humor, right? Um, if anything can go wrong, it will. The universe will twist and perverse things in it in any way it can. Our job is to try and prevent that, right? Now, I have told you all time and time again, the universe is a bully. Its job is to knock you down, rub your face in the mud, laugh at you, and give you obstacles and adversities to overcome, right? And some people's like, well, that's too extreme. Maybe it is, but it drives that point home, right? And if we look back to those laws of attractions, like attracts like and opposites attract. So even if you're focused on everything is good, everything is positive, everything is awesome, you're still going to get hit in the face with a flaming turd at some point, right? Same thing here. No matter how perfectly we think we have everything figured out, there's a very, 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 very high likelihood we miss something. And it's going to go catawampus, as they say where I come from, which means ass over tea kettle. It's going to go bad, right? Um, so we have to try to be aware of what the consequences to our actions are going to be so that we can prevent them. And we also need to be aware of them so that if they manifest, we're prepared to deal with them. Responsibility. That's really it. We got to take responsibility for all actions. All right. 27, we got the law of unity. Every phenomenon exists. Every phenomenon in existence is linked directly or indirectly to every other one, past, present, or future. Perceived separation between phenomenon are based on incomplete senses and or thinking. All is one. This is the all is one concept, right? I think most people who studied magic for any time have come across the concept that the entire multiverse is just one thing. Like all beings are one being. This whole kind of all is one concept. And what's the scary visual? But to some extent, I mean, this is true. There is a etherical connection to all things. Think of it kind of like the multiverse is like a giant etheric ocean. Like there's not anything in the ocean that's not part of the ocean because it's all swimming around in the ocean. So they're all interconnected in some way. That's kind of how I've come to understand this. Now, some people go to the level of saying we're all just random dreams or thoughts of a much larger, more complex being. Maybe. I don't personally perceive it that way. If you perceive it that way, that's fine. And I do understand why people perceive it that way. Um, but at the same time, that does also sort of strip away the individuality, right? So I don't know. This one's a little weird for me. Once you get to certain levels of it, if that makes sense. But as far as everything is interconnected in some way, that does make sense to me because we are who we are. And if we look at humanity's history, no matter how ugly it may be, every success, every mistake, every dumb thing we've ever done, every smart thing we've ever done has led us to where we are today. Without those, we wouldn't be here. So those led a unique path that brought us here. So all those things are interconnected, whether we like it or not. Um, see, yeah, I believe it to be more of an interweaving of everything into one connected thing, a beautiful dance, individuals into whole. Yeah, I kind of view it like a tapestry, almost like the web of the weird concept from Norse. It's all interwoven and interconnected, but still individual. So oh, the being a dream part. Yeah, yeah, I do get that. Um, got too many mice sitting in here. Um, all right, there we go. I keep grabbing the wrong mouse. All right. And then the final law. Um, law of unintended consequences, right? In a lot of ways, I feel this is kind of covered above with the law of perversion. I think it was. Perversity is what it was. Law of perversity. Let me make sure I say that right. Um, but the law of unintended consequences. This, I love this one because it is a good reminder for all of us, right? And I'll be honest, this doesn't even have to go to practitioners. Like every person on this planet could probably do with some understanding of this. Whether or not what you do has the effect you want, it will have at least three you never expected. And one of those usually unpleasant. There's always something else. Okay. So no matter what action we take in our lives, and especially in magic, even when we succeed, even when we get the goal we are shooting for exactly as we're shooting for it, there are unintended consequences. There are things that we've never calculated, we never thought about, that moving that ether had an effect on. Think of it, it's a ripple effect. You can't throw a pebble into a pond without the ripple effect changing the entire pond. Same thing with anything else we do. And yes, Matthias, this is essentially the butterfly effect. And I mean, they simplify it by saying, you're going to have those three things, and one of them is going to be unpleasant. It's a true thing. And this is about, thinking it through, making sure this is a road you want to take, right? There's been plenty of things, plenty of choices I've made that I absolutely 100% believe they were the right choice for me. Did they have unintended consequences? Absolutely. But if you're aware that that's a part of it, then you're also, when you get ready to take that action, do that spell working or whatnot, you're also readying yourself to deal with any unintended consequence that pops up that you face. Oftentimes, I think it's very true that many of us never actually are aware of any of the things that were unintended. They go on, we're oblivious to them. They affect things in their own way that we may never know. We may never know. But at the other times, they do pop up. They do smack us in the face quite hard. And being aware of that is actually quite important. Claude, glad you could join us. Now, with that, actually, that is 28. We are done. Anybody got any questions about these laws, or do you have your own question that you'd like to throw out there that's off topic since we got to the bottom? Because I still got 20 minutes for coffee hour. Oh, that's fine. And you guys can definitely mull them over. Let's see. Let's see, Ethan, me thinking about prosperity magic. I did that helped resolve some issue with a roommate, but the way it resolved it was because of a leak in a pipe. Yeah, that I could see that those can happen. Is there any advice I have for someone moving into the ruler section of Dragon Magic 101? Take your time, don't get in a rush. Um, check your ego, check your expectations. If you're one of those individuals that you always say things come easy to you, spend extra time, even if you don't think you need it, because oftentimes that's the mentality that causes you to miss out on a lot. Um, be ready to be truly harshly honest with yourself. You're not going to lie to them. You can lie to yourself and they will nod and let you lie to yourself in a lot of occasions because they're going to wait for it to blow up in your face. The lower rulers are more likely to wait and let it blow up before they're like, see, now if you'd have been honest from the start, whereas I know Dragon Magic 103 ain't out, but the higher rulers usually, if you lie to yourself to them, they're usually the ones lighting the fuse and packing it with extra explosives to make sure you learn your lesson really good, really quick. So I would definitely take my time and be ready to be honest. And I'm a big believer in stepping back and actually examining what you think you figured out, right? Put it in your journal, come back to it a week or two later and reevaluate it. And then go back and talk to them that second time. Um, because they are going to hit you on levels that I'll be honest, most of us just aren't ready to start thinking about. These are entities that, if you practice Dragon Magic, you will be working with them for a very long time. And it's weird because seemingly every time you go there, you're learning something new. And if you're not learning something new, like we've had people who they say all they want to do is play games. Um, if all they're doing is playing games and you're not learning anything, then I would say you're actually not in contact with them and you need to go back and work, because these aren't entities that's going to waste their time like that either. They're going to try and build you up. There is a lesson there. And if they are just playing games and you are in contact, what's the lesson they're trying to tell you, teach you? You might want to try and figure that out too. Because if all you're doing is playing games and you're not questioning it and you're not growing, you could be literally being baited into a trap of showing you just how easy you're willing to waste your time. You see what I'm saying? So it's one of those things you really got to take your time with these entities. Don't rush it. Oh, Chloe, that's fine. That's fine. We all missed last week. It was Mother's Day. I canceled it. You're good, man. So, see, Claw, is there a specialty dragon to help with confidence? Presumably be an air dragon. I want to say there is. I can't remember its name nor its element because honestly, I could see confidence falling under earth, air, and fire. I really could. Um, but I do want to say there is, and I cannot remember his name or her name. And I'd have to double check that, mate. I work with so many dragons and so many specialty dragons. Like if I didn't have a journal, I'd be screwed. I really would. Uh, I adore them, and it's like I have a ton of friends, and I can't even remember all the skill sets of all my actual friends in real life. So when it comes to um entities I work with, it's the same thing. Like I write things down for a reason. Um I'm human. I forget shit. I get hit in the head a lot, you know. But it's yeah, I would have to check that if you are in Dragon Magic 102. You should be able to find one in there pretty easy. And if your gut's telling you air, go look at the specialty dragons for air. Honestly, that would be, if that's what your gut's telling you, go look at them. And even if it doesn't specifically state confidence, look at the things that are listed and ask yourself, does any of those things overlap confidence? And if so, go talk to that specialty dragon about what you're looking for. If that makes sense. Matthias, so you've mentioned uh so mentioning so something I'd mentioned at the beginning about the personification law. I used to do something similar with storms, at least once with the ocean. Yeah, there's a lot of people who actually do that. And in a lot of ways, I've found weather personification is actually a really great way to do weather magic. Um, I, I'm not going to say it eliminates the rubber band effect that you got to be careful of. Because anybody who's done weather magic, honestly, you know the rubber band effect. We've all seen it, right? And it can get disastrous. And growing up in a place that's really well known for tornadoes, I respect weather. um, but I have found that personification, since you have a dialogue going, um, you can sort of negotiate the rubber band effect a little bit. Like you can't eliminate it, but give and take, negotiate a little bit, I find that if you're good at negotiations, that can be a very useful tool. Now, if you're my D&D group, don't do it. They can't negotiate how to turn on a light switch. They can't do it. If I ever want to TPK my D&D group, I just throw them into a negotiation and they'll die. They probably should not do weather magic in such a way. So those are things to consider, but I've found it useful for me. But I'm a talker, so that does help. And yes, the ocean. People have personified the ocean for years and years and years. Hell, Jimmy Buffett has a song about it. I think it's Mother, Mother Ocean. Beautiful song, by the way. Um, say Matthias, when I used to chase storms, I'd do an energetic exchange with them, not trying to control them, but just a mutual trade-off, and it occasionally felt like a communication was there. I can see that. I can absolutely see that. And yeah, you're not trying to control them or anything, so I can see your point. And that's actually a fascinating concept. Like if you're a storm chaser and you're a magician and you're utilizing your personifying to communicate with the storm in some way to help you get the data, because there's some of these storm chasers that are really getting this meteorological data that's really changing the face of what we understand about a lot of these effects. And you do have to wonder if some of these guys that are what we would think damn lucky to get some of this awesome data, are they damn lucky or are they magicianing this? It's a thought. It's a thought. And it could just be they're just really that committed. Like there's people who's out there 24/7 chasing storms and trying to get caught in them to get data, and I don't want to downplay commitment because commitment's a big thing. You'd have loved to have done it maybe one day. Yeah, maybe one day you will, mate. Be careful out there though. Be careful. Respect Mother Nature. All right. Any other questions? We got about 8 minutes left. Real quick though, before while people are thinking, we are getting ready to start our next live workshop over at the online school, which you can find at workingdragonmystic.com. The workshop will be on life planning and manifestation. We're actually going to be talking about planning out your spell work, your rituals, and your daily practice, your monthly practice, your 6-month practice. Like Many people ask how I get so much done, and a lot of it comes down to planning. I even got a planner right here. It comes down to planning and thinking, and not only planning your spell working, but knowing what your goals are. And a lot of this is going to be things we're going to be talking about and laying down in practical concepts during this live workshop. So if you'd like to get your seat reserved, um, check us out. It's not published yet. We're going to have it published hopefully by the end of the week. But keep an eye out. That will be the next one. And once it is open for signups, I will make sure it's posted on the community first and then on YouTube. Okay. So consider jumping over and joining the community so you make sure you get the notifications first. Uh, Matthias has a question. He's got to type it. Okay. Claw, could you briefly talk about various ways to raise energy for a ritual apart from the Dragon's Flame ritual? Absolutely. So there's a lot of different ways to raise energy or ether. So whether it's um, a lot of people, drawing a basic circle and start to focus on pulling energy in, that's definitely an easy one for a lot of people. Some people, they're like, well, I don't really know if I'm pulling in energy right. Because ultimately, the circle is not a protection, it's more of a container. It's like the cup you're putting coffee in. You set the circle up, but you still have to be able to pour the coffee, right? So a lot of people are like, I don't know if I'm actually pulling it or not. I get that. But you can also do a lot of things to get the ether moving and stirring it up. A lot of people use motions to do it. Dance. There are some of the craziest etherical pattern rituals I've been into where the ether just skyrockets quickly. Um, you don't even have to necessarily be in the ritual. You're just like a participant, but the center of the ritual, they're dancing. You see this a lot in uh, tribal people. They do a lot of dancing and stuff, and it does help raise energy. The exacts of it, magicians have debated. Why does it raise energy? Is it you expending the energy? Is it the dance itself having an effect upon you in some way? We don't know, but we do know these things do help raise energy. I mean, think about the room in a comedy show. You can tangibly feel the laughter and the mood in that room, right? You can feel it tangibly. Just like you don't have to be at the house, okay? But if an argument breaks down, it's a good old slobber knocker, people screaming and yelling and huffing and puffing. You come into the house, and if it's a good enough argument, you cross that threshold, you know something's off, something's wrong. You know it, right? And if it's not that big, odds are the moment you walk into the room where it took place, you can feel it. Something's wrong. Something's not right. You know it. You may not know what happened, but you know something's wrong. Something's awkward. You can feel it, right? So actions do help to raise ether. You can use singing, you can use intoning, you can use goldering, which is essentially Norse intoning of the runes, intoning to pick a rune that actually wants to focus on the purpose of your ritual. So you're essentially raising the ether for the goal that you're wanting. Um, all those things are perfectly viable. Um, some people actually do light candles for the purpose of why this candle burns. It's going to generate ether. It's going to pull ether into the space. It's going to radiate ether. And fire is actually a great stand-in and a personification of something that generates ether. It radiates heat in three different directions, right? So it's a great stand-in for those two. I don't find it as conductive for raising it in large spaces unless you have a bonfire, but I do most of my rituals inside anymore, so bonfire is not really going to work in the living room floor. But you get the idea. Hopefully, some of those spark some inspiration for you there, Claw. All right, let's see, Matthias. Concerning the infinite reality slash universes, is there a way to interact between them, such as soul travel to one? I think I remember you had mentioned something in the past touching on this. used to feel off the ambient used to feed off the ambient energy in concerts, not as on people. Yeah, okay, so what you're saying, that's two things. So yeah, technically speaking, you could use scrying to view into some of these if you can locate them. Locate them is kind of the tricky part. You can also use astral travel. Again, locating them is the tricky part. You need to have a way to get to them and focus on them. And technically speaking, if you get to the astral or your astral sanctum, you could essentially, especially in your sanctum, you could create a door to any reality you can think of. The question then becomes, is it a reality that was there before you thought of it, or did you think of it and create it? Thus, you're visiting something you're shaping as you create it. And that goes into a philosophical debate that magicians will probably never be able to settle, but you could actually interact and visit with them in some way. Not permanently. Not permanently. That is one thing. There is a lot of these people talking about reality shifting where they've basically abandoned life and they've given up and they're trying to shift and live in another reality. At that point, self mastery is left and you're going for escapism. That's my honest opinion on that. And if that offends you, well, so be it. But most, well, not most, everyone here understands. I'm not too worried about offending people. And you guys know my viewpoint. At the same time, poking in and trying to learn what you can from these alternate views and alternate realities and stuff is an interesting practice. But not at the expense of your reality, the reality that you're responsible for. And that's the slope a lot of people fall down. And yeah, ambient energy, ambient energy. Let's clear this up, people. There's a difference in vampirism. Vampirism is energetic vampires take energy from a person straight up. Okay. They take it from a person. It is still part of the person when they take it. When someone says ambient energy, that's not attached to a person. That is energy that is filling the room. It's that ambient energy. It's literally that energy or ether that's floating around that room where that argument was because it was all raised up. That's what you're picking up on when you walk into there. It's not attached to anyone. So yeah, that's that. You're absolutely right. That's not a vampirizing on people or however you want to say it. That's taking ambient energy for a buzz to keep you awake. And honestly, there's so much ambient energy at a concert that makes absolute sense. Um, it really does. I actually know a guy who used to pull on ambient energy so he could keep up and keep going in the mosh pit. Yeah. Um, see, Matthias, I see what you're saying. I've heard of the shifting concept, interesting idea, but I don't want to do this. Yeah, it's a slippery slope. Like, you want to learn things, you want to study things, but not at the expense of you and your life, what you're actually doing. There's this concept anymore that real world, the mundane world doesn't matter. My mysticism is the only thing that matters. Blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, most of those people bitch and moan and complain about everything in their life and their existence. So I can't say they're happy with the choice they've made. I've not actually met one who is happy with the choice they made. Now, at the same time, if someone isn't leeching off of other people, isn't causing other people problems, and no matter how poorly they're living, if they're choosing that and they're happy with that and they're doing that, that's their choice, right? That's their choice entirely. But at the same time, if you're doing that and I don't know, your brother, your sister, your parents, or whatever has to support you in the attic or the basement because you refuse to get a job and only study mysticism, I would say to me, at the bare minimum, that's a problem. Um, So yeah, it's a tricky balance. It goes back up to that law of dynamic balance, doesn't it, Matthias? It's that balance. It really is, because I have so many things I want to study. I have so many things I want to research. And I know that my life is limited. I don't know when it's going to end, but it's limited. So, but I also have responsibilities in life, and I have a responsibility to live life in all of its ugliness and its beauty, because the beauty don't exist without the ugliness, let's be honest. And part of the very thing I love about not being able to run out things to do and learn and get bored, that's why, right? I know that if I'm not going to finish all my interest in workload. Um, but that's a good thing, really, because I'm not going to get bored. You know what I mean? It all kind of interweaves in that. And, depending on how you view reincarnation, maybe I'll pick it up later. You never know. Um, maybe the next meal, figure it out. I don't know. So yeah, I get you. I get you. Any other questions? We are slightly over time. I got time for one more. If not, we will get going, folks. Give them a minute or two to type. All right. Well, then we will get going. All right, everyone. I'm going to head on out. I'm going to go have some dinner. I made me some ribs on the smoker, so I'm going to go enjoy those for dinner. If you are watching this on YouTube and you would like to join us live, again, check out the community. You can find it at workingdragonmystic.com, or you can find a link to the community below. MCH is part of the free community. Just come on over, create your thing. Wonderful people to talk to, ask questions about. I'm in there nearly every day, most of the time, to be honest with you. And if you wish to support the channel, that's also the best place to do it, because you can become a supporter over there, which gets you access to a lot of things at the online school. Most of the classes, you get access to all the live workshops for being a supporter, no extra charge. You're just a supporter. You get a seat in the live workshop. It's kind of cool that way. We also do a lot of giveaways and a lot of supporter only style talks and content. So really, really, it's a good benefit. If you're interested, don't have to. Like I said, you can join the community for free also. All right. I suck at advertising, let's be honest. All right, everybody, have a wonderful week. Take care. Good night.